Welcome to Growth Marketing Camp, where we sit down with our favorite marketers to demystify growth and give you the insights to help turn your next campaign into a major success. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to Growth Marketing Camp. I'm your host, Rex Biberston. With me today is Sujan Patel. Sujan, I know him as the CEO of Mailshake and a few others. Let him do a little bit of introduction for himself. Sujan, tell us about your background here.
Yeah, Rex, thanks for having me. Excited to chat about growth, all things growth today. My background's in digital marketing, kind of been doing that for the last 16, 17 years, since the early 2000s. I currently run Mailshake and a handful of other SaaS companies. I've just been buying and growing them, all B2B SaaS, kind of focused on sales, marketing, and then one oddball HR tech company. But yeah, I mean, pretty much between that and like my experience working as a consultant with various startups from think like Airbnb when they were like an underdog, when they were like, this is a crazy concept, to Intuit, to like all sorts of e-com to fintech to B2B SaaS startups. Yeah, I've just done a lot of different campaigns and failed a lot, enough to where I know what doesn't work to give me a little bit of a direction of where to go.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic. And we're going to talk about one of those successful campaigns you had today. But I think the most important takeaway already for me is, you got to fail a lot. You got to try things. If you're not experimenting and failing, you're probably never going to succeed. So that's awesome. Talk to us a little bit about the background. So we're going to talk about one campaign in particular. I know it had to do with a freemium or a free product that you were leveraging. Do you want to talk us through the setup of what was that company and who was the customer that you were trying to serve in that audience?
Yeah. So I can't share the exact company name, but I'll tell you everything else. Companies in the finance space, B2B prosumer, right? Targeting like small businesses as well as folks that, and you'll figure this out by the more detail I get into. I won't confirm or deny the name. But the other part is they're selling to folks who want to do their taxes, do their bookkeeping and such. Maybe they're like a freelancer or whatever, all the way to like small businesses taking care of their finances there. And what really at the macro level, what the idea, the concept was that like this product was complicated. Doing your finances and like doing the software to utilize it, you have to make a decision that I'm going to be, yes, I want to get ahead of my software. I want to get ahead of my finances. I'm tired of doing it at the end of every year and scrambling and many pain points of not doing it. I'm tired of many pain points of not doing it. The list goes on. Yeah. But the friction point of this software is that, okay, to fully activate, you could utilize it and sign up and pay for it even, but to fully activate, you actually have to like load your books, your accounting, your statements and all that detail into this software and then categorize it and do some work. So a lot of that initial work is a lot. It's just a high friction point. But that being said, obviously they need to overcome that. They need to grow. And what happened was a lot of people bought the software, but then they had a lot of high churn rate. So it wasn't actually preventing them from like actually converting people. It was just preventing them from keeping customers because people would buy it and like, I need to get around to that. And then eventually it gets around, I need to stop paying for that. I'm not doing that right now. But so they started thinking about ways to reduce the friction points. And obviously with reducing friction points can come in tools, people, UX, simplicity, changing whatever. And then they're thinking about, in addition to like these ideas, they just rattled out a bunch of them. Do they solve other problems like top of the funnel? Can they help bring in more customers? So they thought about the pain points these customers have, and they launched Microtools to help you not get a hang of your whole finances for your business, but to solve one small problem. Hey, import your finances here and we'll do it for you. Or import, and it was like these importers from your bank, and it would do like a 30% semi-machine learning-esque thing to categorize your books into the right categories so that it would do probably about 30 to 50% of the work for you. And it turns out, so anyways, again, I can't mention the name of the tool, but what this thing did was it helped, again, solve a problem, but then it helped solve that onboarding problem. But what it also did was it could be a great way to actually get customers too. So again, the pitch is way easier when you say, hey, like just use this software. It's free. So it's free. And we'll do it like this will organize your books. And so you have to spend minutes or hours doing this versus days and weeks. They'll just get the preliminary stuff for you to review. And then the way they tested different things for you to review. They say, oh, this will get the preliminary stuff so that you can save money on your accounting. And when you send this to your accountant, they can take it from there. And so they built an exporter, an importer, and an exporter, importing whatever bank you work with. And then it would just categorize your books. It's very simple in terms of what it did. And then it export to whatever accounting software, one of which was their own software. So they didn't actually build this as a main tool, which allowed them to build it way faster. They didn't have to build inside of their ecosystem. They just built a third-party tool that then synced up with their tool at the other end. And yeah, so they use this to drive a bunch of traffic, get people to get started, and then they use sales to get them down the finish line. And in terms of the cost per acquisition or cost per a free trial of their main product was around about $100 to $150 a sign up, whether it's a demo or signing up for a free product. The CAC total was about $550. The sign up for this free product, because it was way simpler and actually getting people to use it was way closer to the sign up process. It was about $25 to $50 at scale. Is closer to 50. Kind of starting off, it was $25 to get a user, and the CAC to get a customer of their main product from this thing was $300. So almost half. And so what I like about this idea, and I know I'm not saying the name or whatnot, but you could see the amount of accounting softwares out there, and then the couple names I mentioned in my introduction of myself, and you'll figure it out. But yeah, it was really simple because it helped reduce the CAC quite a bit. It helped open up marketing and top of the funnel, and it helped reduce the friction point and the starting point of this and friction / churn of the software. So I think the best marketing strategies, the best marketing ideas involve leveraging the product, or even taking bits and pieces of the product and saying, let's just make this standalone. Let's just go do that. And without it. And what's really crazy about this is the story of Mailshake is that's actually how we were born. We had this complicated content marketing platform that let you find all the folks, give you opportunities of folks to reach out to, let you do outreach via email, let you do outreach via message, Twitter, LinkedIn, and some social media platforms, and also help you tweet and share stuff on the web to tag the people you're going to ping. What turns out the people loved was this outreach part, right? Not a very genius idea on its own. There's many people who have done this or do this now, but we only found that out by making all these random micro tools. And so it has worked, and I've seen this work many times before, is using features or using a function of your product independently of your product as a micro tool, and then launching and getting traction, because it's so simple, but it's complicated enough to where it requires depth. It requires you to think about a product that not enough people take advantage of this.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic. And it reminds me so much of HubSpot micro tools I've used for years. I've recommended their persona builder to probably 200 people, many of whom probably went on to become HubSpot customers, because it was so easy to get involved with the brand. And oh, wow, I can just take this and put it right into HubSpot. Oh, this is great. So I love the example here. And I think it highlights that it's not for you guys. It wasn't about, hey, which channel should we pick and what spend. You had some of that already honed in. You already knew where your costs were going to be, but it was much more about the strategy. Can we nail the right idea, the right concept behind this before we worry about everything else? Now, I do want to dig into a little bit of the execution of some of that. What channels did you find were most impactful for you guys? Where were you spending highest? Where did you find that, oh, we ended up cutting that channel out? That sort of thing. Where were you focused?
So the biggest channel was actually the churn customers is email, but let's put it that way. Email was the biggest channel. So all the people who didn't purchase the product, all the free trials that expired or whatever for the last year, 2 years, I think it went back 2 years. There's thousands, tens of thousands of people on that list. Anyone who's churned all got this.
Oh, wow.
And so that was the biggest channel because it was just free money. It was like, it was free. And by the way, when my CAC calculations and the CPA calculations don't factor in the free channels. Like this
I
is
was
not
going to ask
factoring SEO.
if that impacted them. That's amazing.
Yeah. And the reason is, think about your life. Look, how many people have signed up for Opensense and just not purchased, right? Or like how many people have churned? I hate to say, like, a lot have, but like whatever that's been in the history of the company, there's assets there. Don't stop marketing to people after they've stopped purchasing. They may not want to use your product, but it doesn't mean they might not want to hear from you. It doesn't mean like they don't appreciate good content. And you're right. It's exactly like the HubSpot, I would say, is like the gold standard for a lot of this stuff, or at least they were. I don't think they are anymore. Not to say that they're doing a bad job. I think there's companies
They've adapted strategies.
I think like they've got so much of the product already built, right? They've now done this same play with Microtools to get their marketing stack. They've done that for sales, customer success, and it evolves because they're going after a whole new customer base. So it doesn't work if you're like a marketing tool and want to go after sales now. This strategy is not going to work for you. That's a pivot, right? But what this will do is I think HubSpot built Sidekick, which was now their Sidekick was like acqui-hired from their own main company and became HubSpot sales.
Yep.
Obviously that alone wasn't HubSpot sales. It was a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, it's a huge strategy. I think Intercom does a good job. Intercom and Drift do a pretty decent job at this, although I don't think they don't do it as successfully as HubSpot. And I think the reason for that is that in the marketing tech world, this strategy has been utilized to death. It's been really utilized. And it's also because marketing tech is competitive / saturated, it's hard to build a Microtool that in a space a solution that doesn't exist already. So now you're launching something that's already out there, and your core differentiator might be that it's free. That's again, still possible, but that's a differentiator. It's hard to say exactly if it'll work the same. I do think though, anyone that's not in marketing tech, which is most of the world of marketers, right? B2B, B2C, all that, it works really well. Take your friction points. Think about, so the premise here is take all the friction points from your sign up, your onboarding, everything after somebody becomes a visitor. I'm assuming you can get people to the website. That's what I'm going to assume if we're talking to marketers here. But after the website to like becoming a long-term customer, what's all the friction points? List them down like in a timeline of the sign up to like awesome customer. And then think about, so those are the problems list. Think about what are tools or things you can do to make that better, and people help too. QuickBooks is a really good, or TurboTax and QuickBooks, I think it's all Intuit brand. They do a really good job of having accountants be available for chat. So now they're like, hey, look, we know people are doing their taxes. Talk to an accountant. Boom.
Yeah.
It was a friction point that led to an upsell, an expansion revenue.
No, I love it. I think that it's not just for new acquisition. I was going to mention that it seems like there's other places in your funnel. Once you get to the bottom of the initial sale, that funnel expands out, right? There's so many places where there might be friction currently. I love that concept. Really smart stuff. If you had to do it all over again, or if you could, what would you change? Anything you would change? Any places you would spend that you didn't spend? Any places that you would modify something? Or do you feel like that was like a knockdown home run?
No, I think I always try to do it again. I run 5 companies. I have to count these days. I run 5 companies. So my goal is always to do it again, like to set these things out to be done over and over. And I've got so many playbooks out of testing and failing so often. So I think the big thing is like trying to get the idea to be not an MVP, but what is the minimal version of this idea that would work? I think where I spent a lot of time was trying to get this concept to work. It probably could have been done in half the time had I simplified the idea down to its essence. The other thing is I didn't think about, although I'm a marketer, because this was like a activation problem, I didn't think enough about the marketing acquisition channels and the marketing value. I knew the marketing value was this is going to help people stick around as customers and sign up as become customers. So I
Hmm.
thought about this as like a middle of the bottom, more of the bottom of the funnel problem or post funnel problem for churn. But, and then I said, oh, this can also be used for top of the funnel. And I think
Yeah.
any idea you come up with, always think about top of the funnel and then what you're going to do that. So it wasn't until maybe halfway through, or maybe even more than that, I think maybe 2/3 of the way, where the idea was already fleshed out, that I'm like, oh, like maybe we could drive traffic, paid traffic to this. The
Nice.
answer that we did the math, oh yeah, we could absolutely do it. But had I known that we could have done that, I could have done this way faster, because
Yeah.
now what I've got, I would have more buy-in to go do it, or I have a bigger, the idea had a greater impact. And again, it turned out it did help the like conversion and keeping customers around, but that was peanuts to like the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
had I done it again, I would just do the math and think about all the different ways I can leverage things, because we spent like a few weeks going back and forth on honing down the ideas, when if I did the math and all the ideas, this would have been the best one in terms of impact. And it would have just been, it would be one meeting away from being started versus like a feedback loop and whatnot.
Yeah. That's great. This is an awesome zoomed in look at a campaign for one of the companies you've worked with. I'm sure we could probably do this for the next year and still have content to talk through of all the different times you've tried these things. That's a clear win and a really fun campaign to learn from. I would love to zoom out a little bit and just talk about your take on growth marketing and marketing in general, but particularly because you're like one of the people I think of for growth, right? Like you've had to
Thank
take
you.
things from A to Z. You want to get them to some point. I've read a lot of your content sharing how you've done that with your companies, and there's a goal in mind. So I think growth is, you could maybe make it your middle name, but I would love to hear your take on a couple of these questions. So the first one is, what's one thing that growth marketers should stop doing that they're doing now, or maybe start doing that they're not doing yet?
I think the stop doing part would be to stop focusing in on what they read about, or like the Airbnb examples, like all the growth tactics that you know about. Just think about them as
Yeah.
everything has an expiration date. Use them as inspiration. Don't try to copy them. I find like a lot of people are like, I got to
Nice.
add some virality to my product. 20 years ago, when Hotmail pulled that awesome stunt off, there was not 8,800 other SaaS companies that were trying to get their attention. Email was a lot earlier in its
Yeah.
age. Dropbox, same thing. Airbnb, when they like leveraged Craigslist for a lot of this stuff, those things, use them as like a gold standard of an example, but as inspiration, right? Not
Mm.
in not Don't try to
No,
mirror
that
what
makes
they
total
did.
sense.
It won't work. What people should also start doing, and like this is not a new concept. Marketers should be doing math, but they should be doing the math on their ideas before executing. And I find a lot of times people don't think through the full benefit or whatever of the idea or the value it's going to provide. So one, when you do the math, it forces you to choose, what metric is this going to impact? Like, is it going to help me get more traffic? Is it going to help me get more email opt-ins? Is it going to help me get more leads, sales, demos, purchases, keep customers, whatever it is? I don't care. And then work backwards from that. Okay, if I think it's going to help get me more customers, okay, it's going to have to go from traffic to customers. Let's just do the math. X idea will generate Y traffic, and Y traffic can convert at Z, and the Z will turn into A for number of customers it will provide, right? There's a mathematical standard, right? Let's say
Sure.
10% conversion rate from visitor to trial, from visitor to trial or demo, and demo to sale is 50%. So now you've got a number. Too often do people like get infatuated this, oh, I've got this really awesome idea, I got to go do it,
Yeah.
right? And I have this like jarring memory from a friend of mine who runs an e-commerce company, and he's, oh, we're gonna do a co-promotion with T-Mobile. And I'm like, oh, and they have a list of like, I don't know, 70 million emails. I'm like, that sounds awesome. But at 70 million emails, what is their open rate? First of all, number one problem. What's your click-through rate? So like 70 million times 0.15 and 15% maybe. And then
Yeah.
what's the click-through rate on that? Maybe 1%. How much traffic is that
Mhm.
actually? And then we already know, I won't call him out specifically, but his e-commerce product and T-Mobile, very different, like customer base, right? Like just very different. Now,
Yeah.
T-Mobile does a lot of these promotions and things as value adds to their, like for their subscriber network, and they use it as a good marketing strategy. So it's an amazing marketing strategy for T-Mobile, not so much for my friend who runs an e-commerce business that wants to try to get, I don't know, people to buy whatever. And so
Yeah.
it turned out like this awesome thing with 70 million T-Mobile like email subscribers would generate, I don't know, like 150 sales. The guy gets like thousands of sales every month. So this would be less than
Yeah.
like 10% of his business. But the amount of time his brain power spent on it was like 1 week. Like, it's like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, do the math on your ideas. It'll thank me later, because really it's the age old principle of measure twice, execute once.
Yeah. That's funny. I grew up hearing that in the garage. My dad building something, measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, there you
Absolutely.
go.
Talk to me about, I think particularly with Mailshake, because they're a brand I think of, we see all the time in the marketplace. You guys have done an incredible job with the marketing in terms of like brand awareness. Talk to me about the structure of the marketing department there. How many folks are there? What are the teams? What are the roles like there?
Yeah. Marketing department is 4 people. And then we have like a half
Wow.
person, which is like our sales manager kind of sits in on marketing meetings. And I say half because he comes with really good ideas. Like we leverage, or we try to like solve his problems. And hey, he's not a marketer, but he comes up to us and says, look, we got this problem. Our no-show rate for demos is too high. We got to go
Yeah.
fix this. And it was like, oh, we could just add a couple of form fields, or we could like, obviously it wasn't like as simple as just adding 2 form
Sure.
fields, but it was like
Yeah.
this solution to his problem was like adding in a phone number field, which was optional, but we don't present it as optional. We just present it as enter your phone number. So
Yeah.
I don't know, like half the people who sign up do. And so then we can actually
Yeah.
call them and confirm that they're going to show up for the demo, or text them. So there's like small,
All
simple.
because you brought a salesperson to a marketing meeting. I love that idea. How many of us have ever even thought to do that? It's great.
Yeah. And make sure you tell them before they join, just sit and, listen. Don't
Yeah.
come in and contribute. Don't try to contribute. And then on the other end, person that's owning the meeting, maybe the VP or whoever, they should make sure that that salesperson has time to talk,
Yeah.
right? Or get their
Nice.
ideas in advance, and so that they're heard and they have their kind of 5-10 minutes of the meeting. But that's the point where they're like doing it. Or maybe some other companies, we do the sales team or salesperson joins at the beginning for the first 15 minutes, and it's a sales and marketing conversation, and then like it's done and we have a marketing only conversation. But yeah, so
Yeah.
back to the team of 4 people. Mailshake's core channels for growth, word of mouth and brand. So that's our product doing the work, heavy lifting. It's the user interface, it's the simplicity, the UX of the product that generates this. And that came from like us doing our work on our competitors when we built the product, of like, how can we win in this space? How do we build something that's unique? Everyone complained about the clunkiness of our competitors, so we just focus on the exact opposite of that. So again, that was the marketing
Nice.
strategy. Number 2 channel, and the only other channel we have, is content and SEO. So our team is predominantly comprised of SEO or kind of organic folks. We recently hired a VP of marketing to take over the day-to-day ops of marketing from me. And then I go focus on product, and I focus on
Yeah.
product because that's our biggest channel for growth. So I'm not doing a marketing function any longer, but I am still, the product team now has a marketing leader who's like thinking about customer value to all the features and functionality that we build.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that structure. Makes total sense for you guys. I think the strategy makes total sense. Now, if this is more my own curiosity building up as we're talking about this kind of nimble team, this really thoughtful, hey, we have 2 primary channels. If you wanted to pull a lever to double your growth, right? Obviously, everybody always wants to grow more, especially listening to this show. If you could pull one lever right now, if you're talking about SEO, that's usually long-term. You're talking about a longer play there. Product is definitely something that's going to take a while to develop, maybe some features and facets of it. Is there something you found? I know you guys do a lot of events. I've actually participated in a few of them. I love those. You bring some thought leaders together and share their insights. What's that lever that you pull if you just wanted to try and hammer home a big quarter?
Unfortunately, this is our Achilles heel of our marketing strategy, is we don't have a lever that we can pull.
Sure.
Maybe we can send a couple emails because a couple emails to our like audience or list. That is an asset that we don't like. We try to just keep giving value, and
Yeah.
then so when we have something to say, we can pull that lever. So maybe it's that. I would say that's our best one, and it's a weak one. I'd say that's an area where we're weak because we don't have very many channels, and that means like content SEO is not. You don't wake up one day like I'm going to double down. I'm going to go spend 10 times the amount, and then a month later, but yeah, I got all that value. I got most of that value. It's
Yeah.
one that is the slow investment, and you hope for the best, and you get the value at the end. So unfortunately, it's an area we're probably weak in.
But isn't there something to be said for that? I love that. Hey, it's own the slow growth in terms of not being able to just pull a lever, because then you're not always tempted to pull it too. Because then your email list doesn't suddenly become so saturated that they don't want to hear from you anymore. Even within the weakness lies a strength there. That's really interesting.
Absolutely. I think we try to focus in the long term. Again, like it is, I would love, the grass is always greener, right? So as a marketer, as a kind of growth person, I'm like, oh man, I really wish I had another lever. Which, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean we're not trying to come up with new levers.
Sure.
Our actual issue with this is a really funny issue to have is that like when we do the math on all of our ideas that we try to spend 20-30% of our time on as a marketing org, they're peanuts to our main channels. It's like, why don't we just do more? We always go back to, why don't we just do more of what works? And instead of these crazy, not that they're crazy, it's just, okay, like we can go spend a bunch of money on advertising, or we can find opportunities to get more opt-ins or more content out the door that can get opt-ins or get people down the funnel, that can get people closer and or get our remarketing down again. So it's almost like making this wheel move fast, this flywheel move faster, or making the flywheel bigger instead of doing a whole new channel. That being said, there's weaknesses into that, which is what one of the things is, you don't have as easy of a lever to pull. And the other thing is that funding doesn't help us. You have a lot less flexibility if you only have this big ship, right?
Yeah.
Versus a more diverse channel. So again, we plan on changing that and leveraging some more strategies. But hey, look, I'm not going to complain that we invest money in content and SEO and bring in thought leaders, and people buy from us, right? And more year over year than the last.
Yeah. Hey, and that's growth. That's awesome. Sujan, I'm sure everyone who listens is going to get something unique to their perspective. They're going to learn something new from this. Who in your network of folks that you think of as like great growth marketers, who's somebody who you look up to or who's doing something interesting who you think we should talk to here on the show?
I think maybe Ethan Shaw would be a good guy to talk to. I think he's more product, kind of focusing on that, but he's been there, done that for so long that he's got a very good growth kind of mindset. He's probably the one I think of the most. These days I'm heads down, and I take a lot of inspiration, and I take less value on the person who said it and more on the idea, to the point to where I don't remember, jot down like how I got there. And I think part of that is also that I'm like a little less day-to-day growth. And 2015, 2016, I was in the weeds on every little tactic. I would tell you the numbers. Now I'm more focused on like, how do we move? What are like 3 or 4 big investments we can do? I'm looking at creating levers, and I work with my team to help execute that lever.
Yeah. Awesome. Ethan Shaw is one of my favorites. I listened to his show with Steli Efti from Close.io for a long time. And
they've been doing it for a long time. 500 episodes, I think. It's nuts.
I know, it's unbelievable. Would love to get our show there one day. But Sujan, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your thoughts, your experience, your wisdom from the many campaigns you've grown through. And thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun to share the story, the lessons and whatnot.